Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every determined soul's journey when silence speaks louder than rage. A moment when your growth offends the comfort zones of others. And they'll poke, they'll prod, they'll provoke. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. I'm here to tell you this. Do not react. Cut them off silently. Why? Because reaction is the fuel for chaos. It is the bait laid by those who crave your fall more than they respect your rise. The moment you react, you hand over your power like a gift wrapped in frustration. But when you withdraw without a sound, when you step back and say nothing, that, my friend, is the sound of real strength. In a world that thrives on noise and reaction, the most powerful move you can make is silence. When others expect outrage, attention, or drama, you disarm them completely by doing none of it. You choose not to react, and in doing so, you guard your energy, your dignity, and your direction. The truth is, not every situation deserves your voice. Not every insult requires a comeback. Not every betrayal warrants a response. Sometimes the greatest form of strength is not in what you say, but in what you withhold. Reactions are often emotional debts that cost far more than they're worth. When someone pushes your buttons, when they disrespect you, lie to you, or try to humiliate you, they're fishing for control. They're counting on your reaction to validate their chaos. But when you stay calm, when you choose silence over spectacle, you send a message that echoes louder than any argument ever could. You cannot be shaken. You cannot be pulled out of your character just to play someone else's game. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It's the art of choosing where your energy goes and who gets access to it. The moment you react in anger or desperation, you've already given part of yourself away. You've handed over your emotional balance to someone who may not even value your presence. But when you cut them off, silently, without warnings, without explanations, you preserve that balance. You keep your spirit intact. You demonstrate that you don't need to be loud to be powerful. Cutting someone off silently is not about revenge. It's about redirection. It's about realizing that certain energies no longer match the frequency of where you're going. Some people thrive off confusion. They sow discord to feel important, and they disguise manipulation as love, loyalty, or friendship. But once you see the truth, you owe yourself peace, not closure, not conflict, just peace. And peace often begins with a simple, quiet goodbye. You don't have to announce your distance. You don't need to post it, explain it, or seek validation for it. Let your absence speak for itself. Let your progress speak for itself. Let your silence be the clean break that clears the path forward. When you no longer argue, chase, or try to prove your worth, you are no longer operating from desperation, you are acting from power. The moment you stop reacting to disrespect, you stop normalizing it. You send a message, even without words, that your boundaries are real and they will be honored whether others like it or not. This isn't about being cold-hearted. It's about having a warm heart that knows when it's had enough. A mind that recognizes when someone no longer belongs in your story. And a soul that's committed to staying whole, even if it means walking alone for a while. Silence is your reset button. It is the space between destruction and creation. It is what you choose when you finally understood that not everyone deserves front row access to your life. That some people only thrive when you're breaking, doubting, or shrinking. And that the best revenge is never bitterness or retaliation, it is indifference. It is moving on so gracefully, so fully, that they are left speaking to an echo. When you refuse to react, you rise above. You exit the battlefield without wounds. You evolve without applause. You protect your peace without sacrificing your power. People may wonder why you left, why you went quiet, why you disappeared from their chaos. But let them wonder. Let your silence teach them what your presence used to tolerate. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just walks away. Sometimes it simply chooses not to pick up the phone, not to reply, not to engage. And that silence, that stillness, that's where your next level begins. So do not react. Cut them off silently. And in that silence, reclaim every piece of yourself that was ever stolen by noise. There comes a time in life when you realize that not everything or everyone you've held on to is meant to go with you to the next level. Growth demands clarity, and clarity requires courage. The courage to cut off what doesn't serve your purpose so you can make space for what does. This is not an act of cruelty, nor is it an act of arrogance. It is an act of alignment. When you begin to value your purpose more than your comfort, you stop entertaining what drains you, distracts you, or disturbs your peace. Too often we carry dead weight. We hold on to friendships that have turned into obligations, relationships that thrive only in dysfunction, habits that have long expired their usefulness. We keep people around because of history, not because they're healthy for our future. But purpose has no room for guilt-based loyalty. Purpose has no space for energy that pulls you backward. You cannot build an empire while entertaining everything that's trying to destroy your foundation. Cutting people off silently doesn't mean you hate them. It means you've chosen to protect what you're building. It means you've outgrown the games, the cycles, the conversations that go nowhere. You've realized that your mission is too important to keep letting unhealed people have access to your peace. Not everyone deserves to walk beside you when their presence costs you your focus, and not everything that started with you is meant to finish with you. There are people in your life who are only meant to be temporary teachers, not permanent companions. Some were placed to show you what you no longer want. Others came to reflect a version of you that you've now shed. The moment you recognize that, you no longer feel the need to force connection. You no longer try to fix what clearly chooses to stay broken. You simply move forward, quietly, without drama, and with a deep understanding that making space for better requires letting go of what's already shown you its limit. You don't need to announce the cutoff. You don't need to justify your shift. When your soul is ready to rise, anything and anyone that can't breathe at that altitude will naturally fall away. That's not bitterness. That's alignment. That's you getting serious about your time, your energy, your vision. That's you refusing to dilute your purpose just to keep the wrong company. There's freedom in release. There's power in choosing to subtract what doesn't support your elevation, because everything in your life is either adding to your purpose or subtracting from it. There is no neutral energy. That friend who constantly drains you with their negativity, subtracting. That habit that leaves you exhausted and unfulfilled, subtracting. That conversation that leaves you more confused than clear, subtracting. And as long as you continue to make space for what subtracts, you block what's meant to multiply. Cutting off doesn't always look like conflict. Sometimes it's just stopping the effort, stopping the call, stopping the reply, not out of pettiness, but out of peace. Out of the desire to finally breathe without explaining yourself, out of the decision to protect the version of you that's growing quietly in the background. And when you cut things off without noise, without need for revenge or validation, you step into a higher level of personal power. You're not obligated to keep what hurts you. You're not required to explain why you no longer want to suffer. The people who truly understand you won't need an explanation. They'll recognize the shift because they're moving in the same direction. And the people who resist your growth, let them. Let them call you distant. Let them label you as cold. Let them misunderstand your silence. You are not here to be understood by those who benefit from your stagnation. Purpose demands discipline. It demands choices that won't always make sense to others. But you didn't come this far just to stay emotionally overdrawn. You came to live fully, to grow freely, to thrive in your lane. And that requires space. Space that can only be created by cutting off what no longer fits. You're not being mean, you're being intentional. And that intention is what separates those who talk about change from those who actually live it. You deserve environments that reflect your evolution. You deserve people who honor your presence, not just tolerate it. You deserve habits that elevate your energy, not drain it. And if that means letting go quietly, cutting off silently, and moving forward without announcement, so be it. Because what's meant for you will never require you to shrink. It will make room for your purpose to expand. And that expansion starts the moment you decide to stop reacting and start removing. There's a silent strength in knowing when to let go. Life has a way of revealing to you, in subtle whispers or in painful clarity, the things and people that no longer serve your purpose. The path to becoming your highest self isn't paved with comfort, familiarity, or the need to be liked. It's built on choices that require courage, the courage to release, the courage to detach, and the courage to move forward without fanfare. Not everything that walks with you deserves to stay. Not everyone who claps for you wants to see you win. When you realize that the decision to cut off what no longer serves you becomes not only necessary, but sacred. When you hold on to things that drain your spirit, you're sending a signal to the universe that you're okay with being stuck. You're showing up for people who wouldn't even show up for you. You're spending your energy on conversations that don't heal, habits that don't help, and environments that don't inspire. But purpose doesn't bloom in crowded soil. It needs space, it needs light, it needs clarity. And that only happens when you stop watering what's already dead and start planting what aligns with where you're going. Cutting people off silently isn't bitterness, it's understanding. It's knowing that continuing to entertain energy that subtracts from your life only delays the growth that's waiting for you. You can't grow in a room that's too full of distraction. You can't hear your calling when your mind is cluttered with voices that question your worth. You can't step into power when you're constantly negotiating your boundaries just to keep others comfortable. There's nothing wrong with outgrowing people. The problem is when you refuse to leave the space you've already outgrown. You don't need to explain yourself when you decide to walk away from anything that doesn't fuel your purpose. Some people will never understand your silence because they thrived on your reactions. They mistook your access for entitlement, your kindness for weakness, your loyalty for permission to drain you. But your evolution is not a democracy. You do not owe anyone a warning when peace is on the line. You do not need to create closure for people who showed you over and over they weren't willing to change. The real closure is you choosing yourself without guilt. Your mission in life is not to fix others. It is not to stay in broken places hoping something magical will change. Your mission is to grow, to create, to rise, to build, and to live fully aligned with your highest vision. And that vision will never come to life in a space that suffocates your spirit. So if it doesn't support your growth, your peace, or your values, it has no place in your life. Release it. Silently, with grace, but without hesitation. There is a quiet revolution that happens the moment you say, no more. Not with anger, but with clarity. Not with noise, but with distance. And from that distance, you begin to see things for what they truly are. The people you were forcing, the situations you were tolerating, the cycles you were stuck in, it all becomes clear once you stop participating in your own distraction. Purpose demands that clarity. It requires that you no longer beg for love, attention, or acceptance. It requires you to make space, real space, for what is meant to come. Silence doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've stopped wasting words on people who don't listen. It means you've grown tired of being emotionally overdrawn and spiritually bankrupt. And when you finally cut off what doesn't serve you, you'll feel a weight lift. That's the weight of pretending. That's the burden of carrying what was never yours to hold. And in that empty space, new energy begins to arrive. People who see you, habits that fuel you, visions that inspire you, peace that doesn't need explanation. You don't need to slam doors, just stop opening them. You don't need to announce your departure, just stop showing up where your soul doesn't feel safe. Let people wonder. Let them speculate. Let them rewrite the story if they must. You don't need to defend a decision that's saving your life, because the truth is, nothing changes until you change what you allow. And the moment you stop reacting and start cutting off silently, your life starts creating room for the right things to find you. That's how purpose grows. That's how peace finds its place. That's how power is reclaimed. Quietly, intentionally, without apology.